Hello, I'm Entity, and this is gonna be a rant essentially. Okay, so something that really annoys me with how Batman gets portrayed a lot in movies or especially comics or by his fan base a lot is this idea of him being such a cold and brutal hero. Because before he'd be cold but wouldn't be an asshole, a cruel person, yada yada. But as it's gone on, he just became more and more cruel, or dark, or edgy, and other such. Look at it from the movies, where it went from the silly 60s into it becoming the Batman movies becoming darker and darker interpretations of his character, while we still haven't had a fun, more non-dark, gruesome Batman movie since like the Lego Batman movie, and even then, the kind of live action, we haven't had one since the 670s, since Batman and Robin. Yeah, since 97 movie, I'd say. And you can see this within everything as well, because through stuff like the fan base, you have these people loving Batman just being an asshole or taking stuff out of context. Like in the classic Batman Hush storyline on issue 612, where he says, if Clark wanted to, he could use his super speed and squish me into the cement. But I know how he thinks. Even more than the kryptonite, you've got one big weakness. Deep down, Clark's essentially a good person, and deep down, I'm not. And we'll go back to this in a second, but people would use that and run with it, saying how he's not a good person. The fandom would use that to say how dark he is and how all of this such is true. Okay? Okay. Another thing, that'd be how, since Batman is his most popular thing, most popular character, they would lean into this idea that they think the fans would want, which some do, but I know a lot of people are tired of it. And even the people debating the no kill rule, if he wasn't acting how he was acting, it could be seen far better than it is now. Because, oh yeah, he's not killing, but now they just have him mentally torturing people. Yes, now back to the quote from Hush about how he's not a good person. It is severely taken out of context. Because that is what he sees himself as, not what he is. It is not an objective statement, it is a biased statement. Because deep down, he is self a severely selfless and caring person, but despite this fact, he will never not believe he's one step away from becoming evil, which, to these newer ones, I would say is probably true. But a core Batman isn't one step removed from being evil. He has dark thoughts, but he doesn't have them. He doesn't commit to those. Yes, no. Because Bruce Wayne's a good person. And I've heard some arguments where I say that Batman is the more tortured one, and that's why that quote is justified. But it's not important or worth noting. Most of his trauma every other hero had, usually to far more extremes. And even with that, they ignore that a lot, like immensely so. And they say he's all just rooted in his misery, in his trauma, that he can never love again, despite one of his biggest things being the concept of the Bat family and that he can love people. And then another thing that back to the fandom side of Batman, I am guilty of this as well. I love the jokes about how Batman just beats up mentally ill people, or how he'll break all of your bones for jaywalking. But in reality, he doesn't do that. Simply put, he would never do that, despite the joke being very funny to me as well. Like in Batman issue 133, you see how this kid says that his universe is Bruce Wayne gave up his entire life fortune and put it all into places like the Wayne Foundation for Gotham. And then says how all Bruce used, well, this Bruce had other things to spend his money on. Which he then responds with how he's done similar charity work in his world, and he's a high functioning multitasker, which is true. Because again, despite it all, he consistently as well does severe charity work and all of this such. And along with his rogues gallery and villains, people love to bring up how he just beats up all his villains, about how he's cruel and like that, etc., etc., etc. But in reality, he has tried to rehabilitate nearly all of his villains at some point in time, or other villains in general at some point in time. The quickest example I have, however, which is objective and has never been retconned, would be Plastic Man. As I hope many of you know, Plastic Man was originally a petty thief who fell into acid, yada yada yada, and Batman vouched for him to be a hero. Simple enough. Some of his other rogues gallery that he's helped rehabilitate would be characters such as Man-Bat, who becomes, and I hate the term, an anti-hero a lot. The other obvious ones being Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy. And then again, in the new 52 timeline, it should be Clayface. And even before that, you had people like Red Hood and Azrael who were severely against him or his ideals at the time. But yes, no. But then again, so many other villains, again, like Mr. Freeze and other such. Even the Riddler, who once became a private detective, once he found out Batman's identity as Bruce Wayne, and he helped people. And all of these people had at one point gone and helped people, but especially for his rogues gallery, it gets reset a lot. Even as someone like Mr. Freeze, he gets reset over and over and over again to tell the story of how Batman saved him. And then even with his smaller rogues gallery, people like Jarvis Tetch the Mad Hatter, who in some incarnations you see gets actual psychiatric help and lives a normal life. Or Honey Grievous. Or the dummy Arnold Wesker, the ventriloquist Arnold Wesker, who gets his help from not being with his dummy Scarface. And through that, eventually through time and effort, becomes a well-adjusted person in society again. Which isn't to say that he helps all of his villains again, such as stuff like Scarecrow or Joker, who will never be villains again, who will never be good, except when something happens to them on a very large scale, yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, he does care about people, again, through his villains, especially through people like Harvey Dent, who in nearly every continuity Bruce Wayne was friends with or good acquaintances with. And I think you see this really well in the Batman the animated series, where we see Bruce Wayne funding research to make Two-Face whole again. And then, shockingly enough, in Batman Brave and the Bold, when Two-Face will just work with Batman if the coin allows it. And I think this shows how a lot of Batman's rogues would be rehabilitated. And I just remember this one as well, the Penguin, who, through a lot of change, is now mostly relegated to a slightly legalized mafia slash mob boss now. Okay. Then again, yes. And the idea that a wholesome, less edgy Bruce Wayne can't still be dark and brooding and still cool is objectively false. Because him being a good person makes all those moments where of his doubt, of his grief, and such hit far more. And I think this idea, this edgy Batman who hates people, is cruel, and even into some of the other extremes where they portray him as insane or crazy for what he does, shouldn't be correct. Because again, Bruce Wayne is not, nor will ever be, mentally stable. It's not a detriment, that is just an objective fact. However, he is not insane. He is obsessive, most definitely. But he isn't insane, he isn't crazy. As Denny O'Neil once said, first let us agree that Bruce Wayne is not insane. There's a difference between obsession and insanity. Obsessed the man surely is, but he is the fullest possession of his mental he is in the fullest possession of his mental and moral faculties. Everything with the exception of his friend's welfare is bent to a task he knows he can never accomplish, the elimination of crime. It is the task which imposes meaning on an existence he would otherwise find intolerable. And even with this as well, I don't agree with everything he says here, due to the fact that I agree with the idea that Bruce Wayne will never stop crime to be correct. But in pure objectives, Gotham would be, relatively speaking, a far safer city by the time he retires and Dick or Tim or Cassandra Cain take up the mantle. Listen, like he is a deeply traumatized person, but not insane. And I'm aware how it is a joke or a meme now, but it still isn't correct. He's far from insane, especially when you see how much restraint he consistently has. Now, another thing, now to the next topic here, would be how Batman, again, is a good person. Some of the most memorable moments of these, I'd say, is his interactions with kids. As well are many, 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 many examples of him comforting children, joking with children, and tons of it. Between tons of media, and especially from the comics. But yes, if I'm going to be mentioning children, I'm going to have to mention his kids. Now, with his kids, people say, and I've heard this one a lot, shockingly, how he ruins all of his kids' lives by adopting them into crime fighting, etc., etc., etc. And the only one I would ever say is that you can say that is true for would be Jason Todd. He would have been the best off of a normal life. And even then, at age 12, he tries to steal the tires off the fucking Batmobile, gets caught, and then tries to hit Batman with a tire iron. So, with all due respect, without Batman, Jason would have been dead. A while ago. Would have been dead before he was an adult, most likely. Now with Dick Grayson, the first Robin, etc., etc., people say him adopting Robin is him messing up his life or making other people like him or making sure he ends up like him, which is objectively correct. You see this in stuff like Injustice, where here. Okay, yeah. But Dick Grayson, especially in the comics, he just want to track the fucking mob who killed his parents and try to kill them before finding out his dad was Bruce Wayne when he was 8. If Bruce didn't, if the Robin was gonna help him and make him a better person, he would be dead. With Tim Drake at 10, 10-ish or 13-ish years old, was on Gotham's rooftops stalking Batman and Robin. That's it. That's just, yeah, no. So of course Batman has to adopt him, otherwise he would have died or eventually done something to die or become a supervillain. Next one I'd say here would be Damien, who yeah, no, it's not even worth it. He came pre-trained from the League of Assassins. People saying it's Bruce's fault is objectively incorrect, especially in the current continuity. I'm pretty sure he's a test tube baby and or Batman got drugs to make him, so meh. With Cassandra Cain, um, yeah, no, again, she came trained. I mean, she went and tried to beat up Lady Shiva upon learning that's her mom. Like, if Anna was an assassin and raised by one of the most notorious assassins before that, if he didn't adopt her, he would have not gone to crime, but I could see her dying far quicker. With Duke Thomas, Signal, um, he led a gang. We all Robin, so Bruce Wayne kind of has to adopt him, and his parents are dead. Joker-wise, permanently Joker-wise. I mean, sorry. So Bruce didn't adopt him. Probably would have died if one of his other kids. Stephanie Brown, raised by a literal villain, Clue Master, who sought him out. Simple again. I'm forgetting someone. Batgirl. She dressed up on her own with basic training to fight crime without Batman. So yes, Bruce had to take care of her as well. Simple. And now, to say two things. Within canon, Bruce would and should love all of his children. However, also in canon, you have this man consistently abusing all of his children. Such as, let's see here, in Red Hood Outlaws issue 25, they get into a fight over Jason killing the Penguin, in which he says, and I quote, "I've never seen you hit Joker that hard, and you hate him," in response to Bruce beating him up. Objectively, that is horrendous. And people don't even enjoy this idea of it either, as he should love his kids, and he would, within reason, never hurt them, aside from training and such. And then again, goes to show here, even in I don't remember the issue. I don't remember the issue, I'm sorry. But when Bruce had amnesia during one of the storylines, he says how Dick, Jason, and Tim are all better than him and something else to Damien. And then again showing how he values all of his kids more than his own person. Even in Infinite Crisis issue 3, I don't know the issue for that one, Bruce Wayne judges an alternate universe by the quality of Dick Grayson's goodness. And that's already extreme. Like Dick is his North Star, Dick Grayson is his morality compass. Fully. And now to mention the fact that he loves all of his kids. You see this over and over and over again. When Tim Drake's parents died, when Jason dies, when Damon gets resurrected, when Stephanie has a kid. Wonder how many people know about that one. And all of this such. Or when Cassandra's meltdown happened as well. To go even further than this, again, all the previous kids mentioned he's taken care of. During with Jessica Cruz one time. During the Jessica Cruz run, we see him take care of her and help her from having a meltdown due to the Green Lantern light. And he does it successfully. And people in general are tired of this edgy idea of Batman when he can easily be all of this darkness and all of this such and such while still being a good person. But people compromise his morality and his character consistently in order to have him act as he does. Hell, even in... Sorry, off topic. And my last point here is people say that DC's Spider-Man is Dick Grayson or Wally West or Barry Allen or a few other people, but for this instance we will be saying DC's Spider-Man is Dick Grayson. And to a point, I do agree with that statement. However, I like to play devil's advocate a lot here, and I'll say this instead. Every single member of the Bat family, if written correctly, should act like Spider-Man in some ways. And I say this as I will be leaving off this video on this one. And that is all, folks. And I will see you all later. And I hope you all enjoyed this, honestly. This is a quick sit down thing I made. I don't know how I'll be editing this, but it'll most likely be basic editing. If you think I have any wrong topics or points, I'd be very happy for you to debate me, honestly. Comment anything you want, or you can just email me or post it onto my Tumblr, which I have linked on my YouTube channel. And I'd be more than happy to hear any opinions about this, really, because I'm curious what other people think.